This conference will now be recorded.
All right, welcome everyone to this meeting of the Montachusett Metropolitan Planning Organization. We'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. First item on the agenda is introductions. So you want to read the roll, Brian?
Sure, yeah, and I'm just reading the names of the signatories that I see present today. So from Mass DOT, representing Secretary and CEO Montachusett, not Derek Cravat.
Yep, Derek Cravat here, representing MassDOT Secretary.
Ann Sullivan, representing Mass DOT Highway Division Administrator Jonathan Gulliver.
Yes, Ann Sullivan from MassDOT District 3.
Liz Murphy, Fitchburg.
Yep, Liz Murphy here.
Mark Piamarini, Leominster.
Yes, here.
Laura Schifrin, MRPC. I can't hear you, Laura. I can see you might have a problem with your microphone. I can see that it's on, but I'll keep you in mind. Glenn Eaton is here, though, from MRPC as well. George Kahali, Mart.
Present.
And Brian Croto, Subregion 1.
Present.
We do have a quorum. Thanks, everyone, for attending today.
Okay, thanks, Brian. Welcome all. We'll move to the next item. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, Derek. One ex officio member I forgot to introduce, Robert Schwartz, the Joint Transportation Committee Chair.
Present.
Thank you.
All right, great. Move on to the next item, which is public comments. Is anyone present that would like to make a public comment at this time? All right, seeing none, we can move on to the next item, which is approval of the January 15th, 2024 or 2025, I think, meeting minutes. I'll ask for a motion and second to approve those minutes.
So moved, Ann Sullivan.
Great. Thanks, Ann. Is there a second?
Second, Brian Croto.
All right, motion being made and seconded. Are there any comments or questions on the January minutes? Seeing none, go ahead and call a roll, Brian.
Derek Cravat, Mass DOT.
Yes.
Ann Sullivan, Mass DOT.
Yes.
Liz Murphy, Fitchburg.
Yes.
Mark Piamarini, Leominster.
Yes.
Laura Schifrin, MRPC. She raised her hands. I consider that a yes. Thanks, Laura. George Kahali, Mart.
Yes.
Brian Croto, Subregion 1. Brian Croto, Subregion 1.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, thanks all. Next item is a project presentation for project ID number 612612. That's a nice symmetrical ID for Sterling Route 140 and 62.
And I can give a brief introduction on this. We have a standing invitation to communities who wish to present their TIP project for the group. Today, we just have an informational presentation on the 140 and 62 intersection. Currently, this is listed in 2028 in our TIP. So we have Sterling here, Ryan Meridian from Sterling DPW, along with design consultant Green International. And I can give control over if you have handouts that you'd like to share or however you would like to do it.
Hey there, Alex Chikalis here from Green International. We just have a PowerPoint presentation we can throw up on the screen if that works.
Sure, I'll make you a presenter.
Thank you.
Okay, you should be all set.
Everyone here.
Joe, try again.
Can everyone hear me?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah.
So my name is Joe Lebrecq. I work with Alex at Korean International, the design consultant on this project. And today we're going to be presenting Route 140 and Route 62 intersection improvement project in Sterling. So quick overall project location, we have the intersection of Route 140 and Route 62 in western Sterling. It's west of the Stillwater River, and Route 62 continues west to Princeton and then east to Clinton, and Route 140 continues north to Westminster and south to West Boylston.
All right, so I'd like to talk a little bit about the project's progress up until this point. So just here are a couple important milestones throughout this project's history and its future. So as you can see, this process started back in 2023 when we met with Mass DOT to complete the pre-25% scoping checklist. And this determines the project's goals and needs and things that we need to look out for in our design. In October 2023, we reached two particularly important milestones, completing the roadway safety audit. And this is a process where we engage with Mass DOT, the town, and the public to solicit feedback from them, just anything that we need to keep in mind to include in our conceptual design. Another thing that happened that same month was we got the intersection control evaluation approved. For those of you who are unfamiliar, the ICE is a tool to determine the safest, most cost-effective method of an intersection improvement for any given project. In other words, by completing this process and the roadway safety audit, we were able to confirm that a roundabout would be the best choice to improve the safety of this intersection. And that brings us to today, which you can see by the arrow where we're having this meeting, as we work towards our 25% design, which we anticipate to submit in March, along with our right-of-way submission. And just a couple bullet points, just for a future note. Because this project is going to impact Article 97 land, something we're going to touch upon later, we will also be starting the Article 97 process at some point this year, wrapping up our design in January of 2026. And just based on our previous experience, the Article 97 process can take up to 2 years to be finalized, which is why we have a 2028 as our anticipated year for construction, getting the contract advertised.
Yep, so now we'll go through some of the existing conditions that are out there today. It's currently a skewed intersection with very sharp angles. So ideally we would have 90-degree turns out there, and this skewed angle does not allow for a 180-degree field of view. And there's also a lot of unfavorable grading out there. The existing speed limit is 45 miles per hour on Route 140, and it's 35 miles per hour on Route 62. And when the speed study was done, it showed that 45 miles per hour was the 85th percentile speed, and that speeds much greater than that, up to 65 miles per hour, were recorded. So vehicles are traveling very fast, and a big part of this project is going to be done to slow vehicles down. There's also a high crash rate, and with the high crash rate and the high speeds, you unfortunately get some fatality crashes as well. Some additional existing conditions are that there's no bicycle and pedestrian facilities, so we'll look to add some of those as part of this project. It's also a one-lane approach for each direction, and there's a slip lane for eastbound left turns and southbound right turns, which leads to an awkward layout, and it can confuse drivers and cause them to drive into the oncoming lanes. Some of them use the slip lanes, some of them don't realize they can use the slip lanes and don't do it. The intersection also operates under stop control with a flashing beacon. On Route 140, it's a flashing yellow, and then on Route 62, drivers are required to come to a stop at a flashing red.
So we went into this project with several key objectives, as you can see on the screen, but above all, just improving the safety of an otherwise really dangerous intersection. As I mentioned before, completing the Mass DOT ICE process confirmed that a roundabout would be the best method to accomplish these objectives. And that also allowed us to look into improving other features, such as improving the pedestrian safety by adding sidewalks, and just improve overall visibility with new lighting, and also improving the drainage and stormwater treatment around in the surrounding area as well. Currently, there's no closed drainage system, and water just runs off the roadway, something we call country drainage. And another thing that this project allowed us to do was to improve the existing stormwater treatment basin in the northeast corner of the intersection that it currently is in need of maintenance. And you'll see this on the next slide here. So what I have up on the screen right now is our conceptual design as of today. So you can see we went with a peanut-shaped roundabout, which by choosing this design, we're able to reduce the amount of impacts on the approaches. Typically, on a traditional circular roundabout, we'll add deflection to the approaches. Deflection just meaning curves that will slow vehicles down entering the roundabout. The good thing about peanut roundabouts is that the deflection is already built into the design. So as vehicles enter, they will slow down in order to make these curves. And another thing I wanted to, before going over the design features, you can also see we have, they're a little hard to see, but you can just make them out. The existing right-of-way lines are represented by these dashed lines. And choosing a peanut-shaped roundabout also worked out favorably for right-of-way because it fits rather well within the existing right-of-way. And, as always, we're looking to impact the right-of-way as little as possible to get everybody to buy into the project. But going into the design itself, though, you can see, other than the roundabout itself, we have a landscape center island. We also have splitter islands to delineate traffic. We're going to be proposing a retaining wall to reduce wetland impacts as much as possible. There are 3 residential driveways in the project area, 2 of which are going to need relocations, which we will be keeping in touch with the public and the abutters the entire time, and 1 driveway that will just need to be just rebuilt. So, and this is the existing stormwater basin over here is going to be not only improved, but also expanded to deal with the additional impervious pavement. And a couple things that aren't like we can't point to, but we're also going to be looking into and designing is the addition of the closed drainage system I was referring to. So just adding catch basins and manholes. The lighting system, which our lighting team is working on to determine the most optimal location for lighting up this roundabout. One thing we've been keeping in touch with the town and the utility companies very closely are just the utility relocations that are going to be involved with this project and upgrading the town water line that runs through this intersection. There's currently an asbestos cement water main that runs down Route 140, which we are going to be working with the town closely to relocate and upgrade to a different water main. So then just one more thing about our proposed design. This is what we're looking at for a typical section. So you can see we have a landscape median in the center. And as we radiate outwards, we're going to have truck aprons, which are installed just to accommodate larger truck turning movements. For the purposes of our design, we used the largest truck, WB67s, in order to design just the shape of the peanut in general and where the truck apron is going to go. And then we have our lanes and matching into existing with loam and seed. And then there's sidewalk on this side over here. And that's all we have for today. Thank you for listening. Thank you for your time. And we'd be happy to take any questions. Also, Ryan, if there's anything you want to, if there's anything you want to add, feel free to chime in. Ryan, we can't hear you.
You hear me now?
Yes.
Beautiful. Ryan Meridian, DPW Superintendent from the town of Sterling. I just want to thank everybody here for listening to this presentation today. If anyone's driven through this intersection, they know some of the challenges of it. I can tell you that our fire, police, and other town departments are very much on board. The speeds on 140 are quite high. Visibility is difficult. I also want to thank Mass DOT for working through, some of the early stages with us in Green. We had a lot of good, productive meetings, I think, to kind of hash out some of the challenges with this site. We really tried to limit the, I'd say, private property, existing property implications. Even though the right-of-way kind of almost kisses the front corner of the house on the north side of this picture here, we didn't want to take all of that, and we knew we couldn't. So we had to do a lot of tweaking to kind of get to where we are today, and I think we're on a good track. So I hope you guys look favorably at this project going forward. You know, we're always here for any questions, and I can tell you the town has all the money committed at this time to get through the process, and we're fully committed to this project. So thank you.
Great. All right. Thanks, Ryan. Thanks, Alex. Great presentation. See a hand from George. Go ahead.
Yes, I have a question. There will be lighting for this intersection?
Yes, the proposed design is going to include lighting.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Thanks, George. Any other questions?
Derek, not a question, but just wanted to say this is a really challenging location. As you can see, it's a pretty unique design. I mean, we've done peanuts before, but it's we really we appreciate the effort that the town and Green kind of put into making it fit, minimizing impacts. It was a bit of took quite a bit of back and forth, and we appreciate their efforts as well.
Thanks, Ann. George Snow.
Yes, did you say this added pavement to the intersection or took away pavement?
Adds pavement.
Brian.
Yeah, I'll just mention that though not this particular project is not completely directly related, but back in 2010, we undertook what we called a corridor profile on Route 140 along with Central Mass Regional Planning. And the limits of that project were from basically Route 2 in Westminster all the way down to 190 in Sterling. And this was one of the intersections that we looked at in detail. Clearly, I think that this has been identified as a location where something needs to happen for a long time. It's nice to see the community working with the design consultant push the process along. So indirectly, this is related to a project that MRPC was working on 15 years ago now.
Thanks, Brian. All right. Well, thanks again. Yeah, looks like no more questions. So appreciate that, and looking forward to see how it progresses and ultimately move through the project development process. So appreciate it. We can move on to next agenda item if you want to pull the agenda back up. Looks like sorry, zoom in here. We got public participation plan, review of comments received, and potential endorsement. Is this you, Brian? Oh, I think you're muted.
Sorry. Yeah, this is me. I just wanted to know if everyone can see the handouts on the screen.
I still see the agenda.
Okay. All right. So if you remember back in December, we released our draft public participation plan. This was an update of a plan that we last updated in 2017. More or less, this is our official outreach procedures for the MPO. This is a required document. The MPO needs to has this in place. And as I mentioned, we were due for an update. So I went over this summary of what's in the draft in December. We released this for a 45-day public comment period, which started December 19th and ended February 3rd. And you can see some of the details that we changed. Really, the principles and goals remain substantially the same with this document. As I mentioned, the last time it was done was 2017. So since then, obviously, we had the pandemic. We meet primarily remote now. We never did that before, so we needed to update some terminology and some things in that regard within this document. We tried to make it easier to read, more reader-friendly. We got rid of some repetitive language. We updated some federal policies that we had in place that have been updated since then, and some of the technical language has been clarified a little bit. So again, no major changes to this document. It went out for a 45-day public comment period that ended on February 3rd. So the idea was to review the comments received. with this group, with the MPO, and seek a motion to endorse today. However, we did not receive any comments, so there's nothing to review. We did go over this with the Montachusett Joint Transportation Committee at last week's meeting. The consensus with that group was to recommend to the MPO to endorse. Again, that's the motion we're looking for.
All right, thanks, Brad. Before I ask for the motion, are there any questions or comments at this time on the plan? If not, I'll ask for a motion and second to endorse the Montachusett MPO Public Participation Plan.
So
Make a
moved, Brian
motion.
Croto.
Okay, I second.
All right, thanks, Brad and George. Motion being made and seconded, go ahead and call the roll.
Mayor Cravat, Mass DOT.
Yes.
Ann Sullivan, Mass DOT.
Yes.
Ms. Murphy, Fitchburg.
Yes.
Mark Pamarini, Leominster.
Yes.
Laura Schifrin, MRPC. That's a yes from Laura. George Kahali, Mart,
Yes.
and Brian Croto, Subregion 1.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Move on to the next agenda item, which is the fiscal year 2025 to 2029 Transportation Improvement Program. Review of proposed amendment. And looks like another amendment as well. So I'll turn it over to you, Brian.
And we had, so this is one action that we have for the current TIP in federal fiscal year 25. This is just a proposed adjustment, just like we've seen the last few months. Number of communities have received federal grants through the Safe Streets for All program. This is federal money, so it needs to be reflected on the regional TIF. So in this case, the town of Clinton received $445,255 for a Vision Zero planning and demonstration project. We'd like to adjust that onto the TIP. It being adjustment, it wouldn't require a 21-day comment period. It would just change in real time if the group endorses this. And that's what staff is suggesting.
All right. Thanks, Brian. Any comments or questions on this proposed adjustment? If not, I'll ask for a motion and second to approve the adjustment of the town of Clinton's SS4A grant onto the fiscal year 2025 element of the TIP.
So moved, Brian Croto.
All right. Thank you.
Second, Ann Sullivan.
All right. Thank you both. Motion being made and seconded. Go ahead and call the roll.
Mayor Cravat, Mass DOT.
Yes.
Ann Sullivan, Mass DOT Highway.
Yes.
Liz Murphy, Fitchburg.
Yes.
Mark Pamarini, Leominster.
Yes.
R. Schifrin, MRPC. Yes from Laura. George Kahali, Mart.
Yes.
Brian Croto, Subregion 1.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
All right. Thanks, everyone, and congratulations to the town of Clinton on their grant award. I know a few others in the region got them too, so great to see those moving, and hopefully we can make sure that funds get obligated soon, but we'll monitor that and we'll move on. Is there another item for the release of a proposed amendment, Brian?
No, not this week.
Okay, great. Okay, excellent. That sounds good. Then with that, we can move to the next item, which is the 2026 to 2030 TIP development update.
Okay, so since January when we last met, a number of things have come to fruition. We've gotten updates on nearly all the projects that we discussed in the regional target section. Again, the majority of our discussions happen within this section. This is where the MPO has discretion on project placement. Also, we've gotten our budget allocation for this section, which you can see in this handout. And this is a comparison between the current 25 through 29 TIP target allocation and the developing TIP 26 through 30 allocation. There are some minor differences here. Obviously, we're dropping federal fiscal year 25. We're adding 2030 in this go around. You can see the difference in various federal fiscal years. In 2026, there is more or less a rounding error. We're looking at allocating $13 million. In 2027, we see a decrease of what we expected last time we did this, where we'll be looking to allocate $15.841 million in 27. In 28, we see an increase of $60,000 since the last time we did this, looking at $16.471 million. In 2029, we're looking at a budget of $16.348 million, which is $364,000 less than what we assumed last year. And our new federal fiscal year we're considering is 2030, and that allocation will be $16.61 million. The reason for the differences here is really in the out years of the TIP. It assumes money, so we're assuming what will be available for federal funding. So based on the best information that we have at that moment, we have these out years, in this case, 27, 28, 29, 30. We take into consideration Mass DOT, take into consideration other obligations related to federal funding. So there are some slight differences here and there. This is a key piece that we'll consider along with project readiness and design, and also our evaluation scores when we place projects, and we'll undertake that exercise next month. Another thing I'd like to review today is our transportation evaluation criteria. All the projects in our regional target section get an evaluation score based on this criteria, which we developed in 2018. And I'll just go over what different things we look at when we score these projects. We look at a number of different categories, including condition, where we look at the effect the project may have on the overall condition of the pavement, whether or not it improves the pavement condition or not. We look at infrastructure elements such as traffic control, bike and ped elements, drainage, utilities. We look at the average daily traffic of the facility and award it points based on basically the number of road users. The higher average daily traffic, the more points it gets. We look at whether or not it includes complete streets elements, such as bike or ped facilities, sidewalks, bike lanes, that type of thing. We look at the mobility effects of a project, whether or not we'll have an effect on congestion, whether or not it'll have an effect on travel time. Also, whether or not it'll affect transit service. We also look at the possibility of reduction in single occupancy vehicles that the project would have. Under safety, we maintain a list of top percentage of crash locations in the region. If it's on that list, we award it points. We also looked at the effect that crash rate and crash severity would be after the implementation of the project, whether or not the project has a bike or ped safety element to it. Also, the state maintains a top 200 intersection location list. If the project is on that list, then it gets awarded points. Community effects and support, basically the effect on the surrounding neighborhood, things like noise, traffic flow, and housing stocks. The effect it has on certain populations, namely Title VI and EJ populations, whether or not the project has support from local, regional, legislative governments or the general public, whether or not there's active participation from the community at the MPO, MRPC, or JTC meetings. Under land use and economic development, we look at the effect that it would have to commercial businesses, things like general access, noise, traffic flow, freight access, whether or not it's in conformance with local concepts and plans, and whether it's specifically identified on one of those plans, the effect that a project may have on job creation and access, whether or not it's located near an emergency facility or a regional evacuation route. And finally, the environmental effects. We award it points or take away points based on the effect that we expect the project to have on things like air quality, greenhouse gas emissions, water quality, cultural resources, endangered species, and the overall resiliency of the project. So each project is graded based on their merits. And what we have here is a master list of all the projects we're considering for the regional priority section. We have one new project this year in Lunenburg, safety improvements at Route 2A and Electric Ave, which is Route 13. We were managed to be able to score this project. We're in the process of getting some additional information on some of these projects to be able to relook at the scoring. One project is not scored yet. That's Gardner Shared Use Path Construction. You see at the bottom of the list. You can also see this list is in order from highest score to lowest. We also updated the costs and design status with these projects. So this is more of a reference. If you'd like to review your project with us and kind of see how we looked at this, and certainly if you have additional information or the scope of the project has changed, we're always willing to sit down with the community and look at this and kind of talk through how we could get different things. Again, that's a standing invitation. Here is a updated list. Last month, we reviewed what we currently have for a list on the tip in the 25 through 29 tip. Since that time, we've gotten a number of updates from various project proponents, from Mass DOT, design consultants, and communities. I've kind of created this hybrid list that includes federal fiscal years 25 through 30. We need to consider the 2025 projects because we want to make sure they go out to bid in time. And I'll just quickly go over this. And the idea is to kind of get a sense of how this is shaking out this month, give some updates on the projects, and next month come back and decide on a scenario, develop into the actual draft document. So what we're looking at right now is basically the projects, how they exist on the current tip. As I mentioned, we'll be dropping 25, adding 2030. And here's sort of what we're looking at now. In 2025, Leominster reconstruction and rehab of Route 12. This will be off our list. It's being constructed. It's on time and everything like that. So we won't need to consider this going forward. However, also in 25, we have Harvard resurfacing and box widening on Air Road. This is what's called advanced constructed over 2 seasons. It's also carried in 26. This was a major topic of conversation last time we updated this last spring. Basically, it's recommended to move this Harvard project back 1 year. We don't have confidence that it'll be ready to go out to bid in this federal fiscal year. There are still some things that need to be worked out in terms of right-of-way. You can see in the additional information column I have here, see meeting minutes from April of 2024 MPO. If you remember the conversation we had back then, basically what the case was we did not have a real like home run project to add to 2025 that we thought would be ready, but Harvard was the most ready when comparing every project on the list. So we kind of moved it up to this spot. It's also a high evaluation score, something to consider. One of the things that the town wanted us to consider at the time, we discussed in April of 24 with this group, was that in the case that it is not ready to go in federal fiscal year 2025, we would move it back no more than 1 year, which is something we need to consider next month when we talk about project scenarios. 2026, you'll see the second half of this Harvard project, along with Ashburnham Road Rehab on Route 101. Much like Harvard, we expect this project in Ashburnham to need to move back after conversations with various divisions of Mass DOT. Seems like there's some environmental obligations in terms of some of the regulations the town has to work out with their design consultant. It's recommended to place this no earlier than 2027. Currently, it's at 25% design. 75% design is due next month. So something to consider. We'll likely look at a scenario where this project moves back. In 2027, we have Templeton reconstruction of Route 68. Much the same as Harvard and Ashburnham. It is recommended to move this back on the list due to concerns with the design. This project has been at more or less a standstill for a few years now. And in this case, it's recommended to move back possibly more than just 1 year and possibly off the 5-year cycle of the tip into the appendix. So that's something we'll have to consider. As I mentioned, this project has consistently stalled and designed over the years. And again, next month we'll come back and look at scenarios where this is pushed back. In 2027, along with Templeton, we have Clinton reconstruction of Sterling Street. This project's on schedule for 27. Athol intersection improvements at 2A and Brookside Road, another project that's on schedule. In 2028, actually the second half of the Templeton project, reconstruction of 68, again, we'll look at moving this back. Along with that, we have in 2028 Fitchburg reconstruction of John Fitch Highway, a project that is on schedule. Sterling intersection improvements 140 at 62. This is the project that we just saw a presentation on, which is on schedule. In 2029, currently we have placed Air Road Rehab on Main Street on schedule. Athol sidewalk installation on Templeton Road on schedule, and Winchendon intersection improvements at Blair Square also on schedule. The new year we'll be considering is 2030, and we'll be trying to consider the projects in what we have we refer to as the appendix. Basically, these are just projects we have not assigned a year to yet. What you see highlighted are two newer projects. Lunenburg, I mentioned. The Westminster Roundabout project came on kind of late in the game last year. We actually just scored this project a few weeks ago. But these are two projects we'll consider adding in 2030 if we can fit them, along with the Gardner Shared Use Path construction as early as 2030. The other two projects in the appendix list, Ashby and Sterling, West Boylston, it's kind of back to the drawing board with these projects. We wouldn't be looking to place these in a federal fiscal year. But nonetheless, this is kind of a preview of what we'll look at next month. We'll have to make some decisions on our updated list next month. And this is basically the information we have to date. We'll continue to collect updates on the design status of these projects. And again, if anyone would like to reach out to me, we can go over this in detail, talk about some of the details of each project. And of course, the evaluation score, we're always willing to review that with communities as well. So that's my update for this month. Next month, we'll come back and make some decisions on project placement.
Great. Thanks, Brian. Any questions for Brian on the sort of draft list here? All right. I don't see any, so thanks for the overview, Brian. It's always helpful. We can move on to the next item, which is the Unified Planning Work Program. You Sherry?
Yep, that's me. I'm just waiting for Brian to bring up my chapter. I feel like it's going to be like Groundhog Day for those of you who may have been at the MJTC meeting last week. But all right, so as the UPWP progresses, this month we're going to be talking about the distribution of studies and tasks, otherwise known as the equity section. This is where we looked at two different components. First is the demographics of the region to be sure that we're serving all populations fairly. And then there's also the geographic equity component where we look at the distribution of projects to be sure that the transportation work spreads out across all of our communities evenly as much as possible. For the demographic component, we use the 2019 to 2023 American Community Survey 5-year estimates because this is the most current data available at the time. For the demographic data, we used a few different breakdowns. Environmental justice was the first one, and then FTA Title VI, and then FHWA Title VI, and they all have slightly different definitions. So we reviewed the past 5 years worth of tasks to determine which category, if any, that these projects fell within. The current year task review hasn't been completed yet because we have yet to finalize our task list, but once that is done, we will do the same analysis for those as well. So if you scroll down, Brian, the following table summarizes the results. Keep going. Sorry, those are just the definitions of environmental justice in Title VI. So keep going. So this is how we prioritize all our projects. But the following table summarizes all the results of everything we did. So the rows that are in gray are all the communities that meet all three criteria for EJ and Title VI. And then the map below shows the social equity component over the past 5 years. So the communities in blue without any like purple tint have had projects completed in the past 5 years and do not meet the criteria for many special population definitions. The communities in pink have had no projects in the past 5 years, but do meet criteria for 7 to 9 special population definitions. So there seems to be communities, these would be the communities that we'd like to focus a little bit more on for future tasks. But the region-wide projects were left out of this analysis because they were done for every community. So the following map shows the geographic equity. So the communities that are darker in color show more projects, which is like the darkest color, I believe, is 4 projects, up to 4 projects. And then the communities that had white had not had any special projects done over the last 5 years. But that could be because those communities may have not requested anything specific. So it's a little bit hard to force a hand at a community for a project, but at least we can highlight the ones that we have not done or focused on recently. And then, so that's the equity section. And then once we have our this year tasks, we will fill in some of the holes in that. So speaking of this year tasks, what's on your screen is the list of our proposed tasks for the upcoming UPWP. The ones highlighted in yellow are new tasks to this year. So these we are still working on developing. They're in draft stages currently, and then hopefully in the March MPO meeting, we will have those draft tasks available for review as a handout. For the communities that have requested specific tasks, we had 4, I think. So we had one from AIR, which was an email from their DPW requesting an intersection analysis for Park Street, Fitchburg Road, and Groton School Road. And then they actually did not formalize their request. We had mentioned, that we need a letter from their highest elected officials, which would be their Board of Selectmen. I think they just chose not to go through with the formal request at this time. So we kind of took them off the list, but still wanted to indicate that they did submit some kind of inquiry. And then the second request was from the town of Shirley. This is the request that they actually had provided last year as well. So we did encourage them to reapply the following year, which would have been this year. So this was a corridor study along Route 2A in the North Shirley Business District, which is kind of near where the Bull Run is located. So we do have that listed. I think it's as 3.1 as our task number currently. And then we had an inquiry from Devons. They were looking for some mobility connections in the area of Hospital Road in Shirley and McPherson and Bishop Roads in Air. They're trying to provide some multimodal connections to these areas into their center. There's some existing infrastructure there, but they want to expand the infrastructure to connect some of these locations. And it sounds like they would like to communicate with the communities of Air and Shirley first before moving forward on this project. So this might actually be a good one for next year, or we can incorporate some of this into our trail inventory and regional bike and ped plan tasks that are highlighted in yellow. So we could touch upon this in our existing work. And then the fourth project was from Sterling. They were looking for some information on how to get some bike and ped infrastructure in their areas of the school and their senior center. We actually did a walkability study for them maybe a year or 2 ago and had some recommendations for them regarding this area. So they're actually going to take those recommendations and move forward with some potential grant opportunities. So that does not actually need to be a full project at this time. So just to go over the newer projects that we have highlighted, the first one is the RTP development and outreach. So this is where we start to develop like our game plan for our RTP update, which will be more of a focus for the following UPWP. But this is just to start some outreach, start getting wrapping our head around a concept of how to develop this upcoming RTP update. And then 2.6 is our trail inventory update. We were supposed to do an update every 5 years, and I believe the last update was in 2019. So we are a little bit like a year behind. So we added that one. That will just involve a lot of outreach to communities just to see if they had any updated trail data that we could add to our database. And then the Shirley Corridor, like I mentioned, the regional bike and ped plan update. We did this in 2021, and it was right smack dab in the COVID craziness, and we did not actually be able to produce a document that we had hoped to initially. So we'd like to revisit this and just see if we can incorporate some more outreach in particular to this document. And then another new one is the Safe Streets for All Safety Action Plan update. As you know, we've been working on the Safe Streets for All grant that we had received, and our consultants have compiled many lists of high injury areas, and we want to just make sure that we can follow up with those locations with the communities to see if we can get some funding for them and get some projects implemented. And the following one is a transit resource guide that Mart had requested. I know that Tyler had worked on this one with Mart a little bit, but it should be, we're trying to come up with some kind of a guide to assist Mart with what resources that they have available. So that's what we have so far. We did present this to the MJTC last week and have not received any comments or questions regarding what we have proposed. I think what we're looking for is just a general, we don't have to vote, but I think we just like to say, like, this is what we're proposing. If anyone has any questions or comments regarding our draft list, let us know. And if we don't have any significant changes, we'll be moving forward with this over the next month or so to present further analysis and development for next month.
Great. Thanks, Sherry. Any questions at this time for Sherry or the team? All right. And if not, thanks, Sherry. Appreciate the update. Glad to see everything's moving forward, and seems like a good update this year. So looking forward to see how that unfolds and see the draft come out later this spring. But with that, we can move on to a sub-region representative caucus. Brian?
Yep, and after several months of talking about this, we actually held our sub-region representative caucus last week, which was a success. You can see we have nearly a full slate of signatories, which we haven't had for a very long time. It was great to meet in person. Thanks for everyone who came to that. I think going forward, it's nice to have a re-engaged group. A lot of the newer members, they come from various backgrounds. Many of them haven't been involved with the MPO up to this point, so we're looking forward to getting those people up to speed. Certainly, we appreciate them volunteering to come to the meetings. Some of them couldn't make it today, but we hope to have a re-engaged group starting next month and continue on with our hit streak of getting a quorum at all these MPO meetings. So again, thank you all. And what you see here is our signatory list, so for future reference.
Great, thanks, Brian. Any questions on that? Right. Seeing none, we can move on to normal updates. So we can start with MassDOT Highway Division. We can start with District 3. Yeah, share.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
So the first project on 2025 is Leominster Route 12, which was advertised last year. This is just another, this is advanced construction that was included on 2025. The NTP has been issued to J.H. Lynch. That was done in December. And they've already had the pre-con, and they're really they're kind of getting ready for the spring. The second, Harvard resurfacing box widening on Air Road from Route 2 to Airtown Line, 609213. That project is at 100%. The PS&E is due in June. As discussed, the expectation is that won't make 2025 due to the right-of-way that's required. Next is Hubbardston Bridge Replacement Project, Williamsville Road over Burnshirt River. This is 609187. This is at PSNE, just waiting on some environmental filings and for the right-of-way to be completed. The next project is Sterling, stormwater drainage improvements at the Wachusett Reservoir on Route 110. This is 610659. It's at PSNE. The right-of-way cert has been issued. There are some last-minute negotiations on the environmental permitting, so we might have to have another PSNE to kind of reflect some of those changes, but we're expecting that to make it. Gardner, Elm Street, resurfacing and sidewalk improvements. This is a Safe Routes to School project. This a 610672. This is also at PSNE, and we're just waiting on the right-of-way for that one. And then Fitchburg, Leominster, Twin City Rail Trail. This is another AC project. It was advertised last year. The NTP was issued to ETNL also in December, and they're starting kind of getting ready to really. There'll be some. It might take some time to kind of get the approvals that we need from MBTA. Is work on the bridge, and they want to start with that bridge. So, it might take a little while to actually see it moving, but hopefully by the beginning of the summer, it's starting.
Great. Thanks, Ann. Any questions? All right. Seeing none, we can move to District 2. Daryl?
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. So for District 2, starting in FY26, we have a non-target project 612151. This is the Athol Bridge Replacement, Route 2A Main Street over the G&W Railroad. The design is currently at pre-25. Railroad agreement has been signed and executed. Bridge type selection worksheet was submitted on December 20th. Review comments were completed on January 22nd. And next we have a public info meeting scheduled for tonight, actually. And then after that, we have the 25% design submission is due in May, on May 3rd. Next we have, I can put the link into the chat too after this, if anybody's interested in that informational meeting. On 2027, we have project 608415. This is Athol intersection improvements on Route 2A and Brookside Road. The design is at pre-25. Hydraulic data is being updated, and the revised bridge type selection worksheet was submitted on January 23rd. And next we have the comments are due on what were due yesterday, so I'm waiting updates on that. Schedule dated January 10th indicates 25% design submission is due on March 18th, and just waiting on updates from the project manager. Finally, we have Templeton, which was mentioned earlier. This is 608424. Reconstruction of Route 68 from King Philip Trail north to the Phillipston Town Line. Design is at 75%. The designer met with the municipality back in September on the 4th to discuss additional scope and a contract amendment. As of today, we're waiting for updates on the project, and as we understand, the town is waiting for an updated contract proposal from their design consultant. And that's all I have for now.
All right. Thanks, Daryl. Any questions for Daryl? All right. Move on to transit updates. Anything from Mart?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I have only one item. As I mentioned last month, Mart was notified of Mass DOT award of a successful grant application. It provides $278,000 for 1.5 years through June 2026 for a shuttle service to Emerson Hospital from the towns of Air, Shirley, and Harvard, providing healthcare options for the many residents of the region impacted by the recent closure of the Nashoba Valley Medical Center. After meeting with the impacted towns' elected officials, we created a shuttle service schedule to Emerson Hospital with one stop in each community selected by town officials. The shuttle service will start on Monday, February 24th. And this service is open to anybody or to any from the surrounding towns or any individual to come to the stops in these three communities and can use the service to the hospital. And the service is free of fares. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, George. Sounds like a great project, so congrats on that award.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, and any questions? All right, we move on to MJTC updates.
Yep, MJTC met last week, and as we typically do in the spring, our main focus is overlooking the UPWP and TIP development to provide some input to the MPO, which we did last week. We'll continue next month. The next meeting is on March 12th. I do have some additional handouts that I'd like to give notice of. The first, Daryl mentioned this Athol Bridge Replacement Public Information Meeting. There's a link here to the meeting tonight at 6 o'clock. Also, the Citizens Planning Training Collaborative has their annual conference Saturday, March 15th at Holy Cross. And of note, there's a session on regional planning agencies and what they can do for you. Karen Chapman, our planning and development director, is part of this presentation. So if you're interested, we encourage you to register for that on the 15th.
Okay. All right, thanks, Brian. Any questions on that? Now we can move on to updates from MRPC.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, and Laura's here if she wants to chime in, but I just want to make the MPO aware that the MRPC is following the situation concerning federal funding out of stories out of inside the Beltway, and the only threat right now to federal funding for the MRPC might come from the U.S. EPA. We have a brownfields environmental site assessment program, and that's just one bullet. I guess the second and final bullet of my presentation would be that the Association of Metropolitan Planning Organizations, or AMPO, started last Friday to send out what they're calling the Friday docket, basically to follow that story, track it, and keep MPOs informed of what's going on with MPO funding. They have issued a survey link to MPOs if there are any issues with obtaining funding through MPO funding for transportation planning. They want to know. That's it for the report. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Great. Thank you, Glenn. Any questions? All right. Thank you. And now move on to the next item, which is just administrative matters. See something for the open meeting law.
Yep, I put this on just if there's any insight. It looks like the extension of the open meeting laws originally done in 2020 that allow us to meet remotely will likely be codified, if you will, going forward. I know there's some legislation working its way through the State House right now. Currently, the current extension ends March 31st. So worst case scenario, we'll have one more remote meeting before we would be forced to meet in person, but it looks like it won't get to that point. The next MPO meeting will be March 19th at 1 o'clock, and we'll be discussing the TIP and the UPWP again.
Yep. All right. Thanks, Brian. Any other business or matters from MPO members or others? All right, don't see any. So with that, I'll ask for a motion and second to adjourn.
I'll make a motion, Mark Pimarini.
I'll second, Ann Sullivan.
Thank you both. Motion being made and seconded. We can do this by a voice vote. So all in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Any abstentions?
Thank
All
you.
right. Without objection, we are adjourned. So thanks, everyone. And we'll see you next month. Stay warm.
Thank you.
Bye all.
Thank you.
Bye.